Hey, Astro Kids, and welcome back. This is your horoscope for Pluto Retrograde, which will take place from April 27th through October 6th of 2021. Now, this is a little bit of a controversial topic as I am using Vedic astrology, and particularly Pluto is used in Western tropical astrology. But a lot of you have asked me to incorporate these outer planets in the horoscopes for those of you who are watching this channel. So, Pluto does hold a lot of significance in these transits, in these predictions that we're talking about here on this channel. But also keep in mind that Pluto is a transpersonal planet. It is one of those outer planets that is more up in the higher dimensions, the higher realms. And so this planet really doesn't hold personal karmas. It holds generational karmas, world karmas, right? This is a planet that is not necessarily embedded into our personality, into our personal experience. This is generational, this is worldly, being on the outskirts of our solar system. Pluto also, if I were to look into someone's chart, it would have to hold a very significant placement to really have a huge effect on the person. Otherwise, it's really affecting the generation that the person has been born into. So, again, this is more of a wide ranging influence where this is not necessarily holding on to those personal karmas that we have in our own life path, in our own karmic duties. So let's go ahead and talk about what this Pluto retrograde is going to do for us as we go through this transit. So, first of all, we have to understand what Pluto is about. Now, in Vedic astrology, once again, this is primarily not used as much. But for those who do use Pluto in Vedic astrology, it is depicted as Lord Shiva. So if you know about Lord Shiva, then you know what this influence of Pluto is like. It is very much destructive. It is bringing about the dismantling, the dissolving of things, right? And this is not a negative thing. This is to clear the path for something new to be born out of it. So this destruction, this dismantling of tearing things apart to rebuild something new. This is going into the creation story of how everything was brought into existence. So I'm not going to go heavy into Lord Shiva and what that's all about, but just to give you a little bit on what this Pluto influence is all about from a Vedic perspective, that this is more of a recycling, a dissolving, a destruction of breaking things down so that we can make room for something new to blossom, for something new to come about. Now, if we look at this from a Western tropical perspective, Pluto is symbolized by Hades. By Pluto is the Roman form of Hades in Greek. So we have this correlation of the god of the underworld with this Pluto influence. It is all about the things that are hidden underground, the things that are darker, the things that we hide and keep within ourselves, the psyche, all of these things that are hidden and concealed that need to be worked through and resolved. So, unresolved issues are in here. These psychological traumas are stored into this Pluto energy. This is all about getting rid of the things that no longer serve us. And again, this is going to be more on a collective scale. This is a transpersonal planet. So typically, if I'm looking at an area where someone needs to release or let go of, I'm typically looking for Scorpio and K2 in their chart. Those are the personal areas where that work needs to be done, along with the eighth house. This Pluto energy is like taking that energy of Scorpio, the eighth house, and K2, and amplifying it to a generational, worldly type of influence, where this is literally taking the things that no longer serve us on a collective scale, breaking it down, and making a fresh new slate for something to be born out of it. So we're going to talk more about this influence and how it's going to affect us all throughout this transit. So first of all, this Pluto retrograde, remember that Pluto is all the way at the end of our solar system. So Pluto is a very slow-moving planet. So it will remain in the same nakshatra of Uttara Ashada. Uttara Ashada is symbolized by the elephant tusk. It is this nakshatra that is all about following the karmic duty, following the karmic principles, staying true to the moral right path. So we are in this nakshatra here of this karmic duty, this discipline, this structure of staying committed to the task, staying focused on the call, staying focused on your purpose, this mission. And here in this nakshatra, this is connected to our victory as well, right? How much we're putting into our purpose, into our dharma, and that gives us the results of our victory or our failure, which is something that we talk a lot about with Bhadra Ashada and Uttara Ashada. So in this influence here, as Pluto is here in this retrograde, a huge theme here is, are we going to prevail? Are we going to overcome the difficulties, the things that are stuffed down, the fears, the obsessions, the traumas that are on repeat, all of these deeper issues? Are we going to overcome this and heal through this so that we can rise to victory? And especially as this is happening in the two Saturn-ruled nakshatras. This is going to take place starting out in the third pada, and then it will shift over into the second pada. So now we're dealing with this Aquarius Navamsa and this Capricorn Navamsa, where this is all about your future ambitions, your thoughts, your goals, your plans, your strategy of how you are going to get to your accomplishment, how you're going to achieve what you've set out to do. So again, this theme of victory is coming in here as we're going through this transit. And this is happening in Capricorn. So again, this overarching theme of Saturn's influence being about this victory, this accomplishment. And Saturn is in Capricorn. It will remain there in Capricorn for the rest of 2021. So this influence of Saturn is heavy on Pluto, where now we're going into the depths, the underworld of what is it that's stopping us from rising up to our purpose, from taking our status, our position in the world, for reaching our goals and ambitions. What is it that is stopping us at the deepest core level, at the deepest psychological level? What is it that is going on deep within? And so as we're coming into this transit here, and it's affecting us all together on a collective scale, there is a deep-rooted issue that is not only your personal issue, but the main issue of society at this point. What is our collective trauma that we are trying to go through with this transit? Now, I also added in some important dates to this transit of Pluto retrograde, because as Pluto goes through this, obviously Pluto will meet up with the moon several times, and we will talk more about that as we go through the weekly horoscopes. But we also have some major planetary influences that are going to affect this as well. So starting off on May 23rd, Pluto will start off in this close connection to Saturn. So remember that Saturn is in the sign of Capricorn as well. But when Saturn starts to retrograde, it's going to come closer because Pluto is very much at the beginning of Capricorn, where Saturn is halfway through, it's past halfway through, where these two have some distance between them. As Saturn begins to retrograde on the 23rd of May, they're going to come closer to one another. So this is starting, this intensity of Saturn and Pluto starting to inch closer to one another. And this becomes a very intense influence, not only because now Saturn is in its retrograde, which is going to take us into some reviewing of our society, of our structure, of our discipline, of our rules, of the things that have been put in place. So there is some reviewing that's happening. Remember, this is nothing new. We have Saturn retrograde every single year. This is this review period where we're going over our worldly structure, our worldly discipline, our worldly foundation, and how is this serving us? Is it serving us, or are there changes that need to be made? So we have this review period going on, and at the same time, Pluto is in a review period where now not only are we looking at this in terms of the structure, the foundation of our society in general, but now we're going even deeper into the issues, the deep rooted difficulties that are affecting our society as a whole. And how deep can we go? How much can we uncover? How much that is hidden deep underground? How much of that can we bring up to the surface and heal and work through to resolve these deep rooted issues in our society? And so this is a huge transit as we're coming through this. Depending on where this is in your chart, this can affect you greatly. Again, Pluto is a transpersonal planet, so it doesn't necessarily store personal karmas. But as it goes through this transit, it can affect your chart, depending on where it is positioned. So, not your personal karmas that you're born with, but the influence that it has as it moves through your chart. Now, on June 2nd, we have Mars that is going to enter into the sign of Cancer. And so now Mars is going to directly oppose Pluto from the opposite sign. So Mars is going to be in Cancer, which is a very difficult position, which we'll talk more about as we get closer to the month of June. But Mars is debilitated in Cancer. So Mars really isn't functioning well in the sign of Cancer, right? Mars is our energy, our strength, our discipline, our ability to follow through on task. Mars is a soldier. It is here to get things done. It is here to take the initiative. This aggressiveness, this impulsiveness, this straightforwardness of Mars doesn't operate in Cancer, because what is Cancer? Cancer is ruled by the moon. It is the original fourth house of the zodiac, our home, our family, our comfort, our luxury, the things that feel comfortable and safe to us. Well, Mars has to go into uncertainty. Mars has to go out into the war, out into the unknown, out into dealing with the challenge, the conflict, which is why Mars is exalted in Capricorn, the original 10th house, where we go out into the world to fulfill our purpose. So Mars is debilitated here because Mars has to leave the safety, it has to leave the comfort, it has to go out to protect and defend the homeland. So Mars can't stay at home, it has to go out. It has to fulfill this mission, this purpose. And so as Mars comes into Cancer, this becomes a difficult transit where now our energy level, our drive, our initiative to take action is stunted a little bit, because now Mars becomes much more emotional. It becomes much more about what is comfortable, what is safe, right? The passion, the energy, the vitality goes into what is safe, what is stable, what is comfortable. And so this stunts us from going out of our comfort zone and actually taking action, initiating, going after the things that we want in life. And so this is where this transit becomes difficult. Now, as Mars directly opposes Pluto, what happens here is we get this very intense energy. Because again, Pluto is the things that are buried deep underground, and Mars is our energy, our drive, our vitality. And so as Mars and Pluto come into this opposition, we get this aggressiveness, this anger, this frustration. Now these hotter emotions that were once hidden deep underground are coming up to the surface. So this gives very intense, explosive types of expression, especially in Cancer. It becomes very emotional. So we get these explosive, dangerous, impulsive emotions that come up to the surface. So again, we'll talk more about that as we get closer to June, because there's more things that are involved in that with the actual aspects of Mars as well. Now, on June 13th of 2021, the moon is going to come with Mars as well. So now not only do we have Mars in Cancer giving these very intense emotions with that opposition of Pluto, which is blowing those emotions up out of proportion. And then we have the moon, which is the karka for our emotions, coming into its own sign, joining up with this intensity. So this is a very emotional time, a very impulsive time, a time of acting on emotions. Because remember that Mars is where our drive, our energy goes. So now we have all of this emotion going on, including the moon, which is reinforcing this. And so this is going to create very high emotional reactions, very high intensity, very high intuition. So, again, we'll talk more about that and how that will play out. But it's going to play into these deep rooted societal issues and traumas that are coming up to the surface. And so, this type of energy can incite riots, it can incite protests, it can incite people who are proactively standing up against these issues of society. But again, we'll talk more about that as we continue moving forward. On June 22nd, Venus will meet up with Mars. And so we have a meetup of the feminine and the masculine. Now, this is happening in a feminine sign. And not only is Mars debilitated in the sign of Cancer, but Venus is not having a fun time in the sign of Cancer either, right? This creates a very luxurious, very impulsive type of desire with Venus in Cancer. Because remember that Cancer is our comfort, our security, what nurtures us. So is Venus. So this creates an extreme desire, extreme need for comfort and security, this extreme need for luxury, this extreme need for the things that are nurturing. So we'll talk more about that later on and how that affects us. But this can stir up things like addictions. This can stir up things like unnecessary desires for pleasure, for comfort, for safety. And this gets blown up through this Pluto energy where this is connected to the traumas, it's connected to the fears, it's connected to these things that are hidden deep underground that need to be resolved. So this is going to be huge coming into this. And as we shift into July, on the 16th, we will have the Sun oppose Pluto as well. Again, very intense. The Sun is our soul, our ego. It is the center. It is where the light goes, what we can see, what we put our focus in on. And so, societally, what we are putting all of our focus into, now we're going to see the traumas, the issues that are connected to that. Why are we putting our focus into it? What is the deeper underlining issue that is behind our intentions, behind what we're putting this energy, this light into? And so you can see how this transit of Pluto is taking us deeper as a society, as a whole, into these issues, these conflicts that need to be addressed within our population. And again, this doesn't mean that these issues are going to be addressed in this transit. That's something that we'll talk more about later on. But what this does show is that there's a lot that is going to come up to the surface through this influence of Pluto. Now, on July 25th, our last major transit that will affect us through other planetary means is when Mercury meets up with the sun. So this will be a combust Mercury in an opposition to Pluto. Very intense. Remember that when Mercury is in a combustion, it gives us brilliance. It gives us this light bulb over the head type of moment, right? This flash of insight, of knowledge. At the same time, though, when the sun and Mercury come together, this also gives us difficulty around actually communicating, getting things out, making logical decisions. Why? Because the sun is adding all of this energy, all of this light to Mercury, where this Mercury energy becomes very active, right? So, this is where this energy becomes very restless. It becomes very difficult to actually express these thoughts, these decisions, because there's so much energy that Mercury is being supercharged with. But again, we're going to talk more about that later on. But as Pluto comes into this opposition, now we have what's the deeper underlying issue of why we can't make proper decisions, of why we can't express these ideas, these things that need to come up to the surface, why we can't communicate and get the message across of what needs to be focused on, of what needs to be illuminated. What is the issue that needs to be brought to our attention? Why we can't find the means to communicate that, to get it across, to make it known, to make practical decisions based upon it. Now, this is what the chart will look like for this transit of Pluto retrograde. So this is going to be a major time here as we go through this. Now, for those of you with a Taurus moon, Taurus ascendant, again, you have Rahu in your first house, so you already have so much that's going on between this Rahu Ketu axis of your first and seventh house, where there's a lot that is going on here internally in terms of changes, in terms of your desires, in terms of where you're heading. And so there's a lot that you are gathering and learning from other people that's fueling your own ambition. But along with that, we have this Pluto retrograde that's going to go on here in your ninth house. So this is a huge time of self discovery, right? This is a huge time of taking the things that you have learned internally and applying it to your life, taking the wisdom, taking the knowledge, taking the deeper insight, and using this, following this. So your karma, your dharma, the lessons that you've gained, the wisdom, your teachers, your mentors, all of this is going to transform your life in a huge way, especially if you are taking the time to meditate, if you're taking the time to look deep within, if you're taking the time to reflect on things. And remember that we have this Saturnian influence going on here also, with Aquarius ruling your 10th house. So, this work that you do, this learning, this experiencing of applying this knowledge, this wisdom that you've gained, can greatly affect your career, especially with Saturn controlling your 10th house in this conjunction with Pluto. You also want to look at what's going on in your D10 chart as well. For those of you who have Gemini, Ascendant, or Moon, remember that you have this Mars influence going on here in your first house. And it will shift forward into the second house where it will make an opposition over to this Pluto retrograde going on in your eighth house. So this is a major, major time here of looking deep within, of going deep within, of doing the internal work, the internal reflection. This is where you can see a lot of things that are hidden, right? We call this eighth house the pit or the cave where things are stored in the dark. So any sort of fears, insecurities, issues, conflicts deep within that need to be faced and addressed. Looking at this, going through this is major. For those of you With a Cancer Ascendant, Cancer Moon, this will be Pluto retrograde in your seventh house. A lot of work around relationships, right? And remember that the seventh house is the marketplace. So it's not just about your romantic relationships, but this is about your relationship with anyone. So you can see some themes going on here in your relationships where if there are unresolved patterns and issues coming up here, to face this, to work through this, to address this at a deeper level. This is where the change needs to take place, the internal change. So there's a lot here that your relationships are going to reflect back to you as a Cancer Moon, Cancer Ascendant. For those of you with a Leo Moon, Leo Ascendant, this is going to be a Pluto retrograde. And remember that you have K2, which is already going on here in your fourth house, right? So there's a lot of internal reflection, a lot of internal work already. But as we work our way up to the sixth house, we find Pluto retrograde. So a lot of things that are being revised and worked through on the work front for a lot of you in your routine, in your habits, a lot of things that need to be changed and addressed for those of you with a Leo Moon, Leo Ascendant. Now, for those of you with a Virgo Moon, Virgo Ascendant, this will be a Pluto retrograde in your fifth house. This is an interesting one. This is a time where any projects, any sort of talents that you've left behind, this can be a time of revising these things, bringing these things back to the forefront. This can be a time of revising your projects, your goals, your interests, and really looking deeply at everything before coming to a final conclusion, a final decision. So there's a lot that you can gain as this is going to be aspecting over to your 11th house. For those of you with a Libra Moon, Libra Ascendant, we're going to start off this transit with the Moon in your first house. So this is already very emotional going through this transit here. And from there, we have this Pluto retrograde that is happening here in your fourth house. So this is a major, major time of deep internal reflection, deep inner work, looking within yourself through this transit for those of you with a Libra Moon, Libra Ascendant. This is going to help you grow tremendously. And so you may find that you feel more inclined to go within, to look within, to address issues. This can be within your physical home, where you're actually looking into some unresolved issues within your home environment. But for the most part, this is you going within yourself. Remember that this fourth house is originally ruled by Cancer, the Moon, which is the mind. This is deep internal reflection. For those of you with a Scorpio Moon, Scorpio Ascendant, you already have K2 in your first house. So this is a major time where you're going through these shifts and changes internally. You're going through a spiritual transformation and evolution for those of you with a Scorpio Moon, Scorpio Ascendant. On top of that, you have a Pluto retrograde that is taking place in your third house. Your communication is going to undergo a lot of changes. This is a major time of looking at these unresolved issues around communication, around expressing your skills, around sharing your knowledge, your insight. So this house of communication is strongly being influenced. And for those of you with siblings, you may see some issues around siblings. This is all connected to the communication aspect of this. Looking and seeing where the blocks are, because remember that Saturn is transiting through your third house of communication, bringing in these delays and restrictions. What are the blocks that are stopping you here in this third house? For those of you with a Sagittarius Moon, Sagittarius Ascendant, this will be a Pluto retrograde in your second house. Very important that you're working on your security. And with Saturn here, this is a time where a lot of you are very good in this area, being very strict, managing things, but there can also be a fear here of actually being more prudent and closed off in this area. And so what is going on here? And this can be strongly connected to family issues because remember that that second house is our value, it's our early upbringing, it's what shaped us at an early age. And so here, as Pluto is retrograde, there can be a lot of unresolved issues and a lot of fears, as Saturn is the karaka for fear, around the security in your early upbringing. So there can be a lot here that needs to be addressed and looked through. And you may find that a family member is trying to lean on you to find your security, your support from you at this time. This is a huge time where you want to pay attention to how you're managing others financially, in terms of security, in terms of intimacy, as this is going to reflect back to your own security. For those of you with a Capricorn moon, Capricorn ascendant, this is Pluto in your first house. So you are going through this deep internal transformation and reflection as you have been for quite a while now. Saturn in that first house also with this maturing, this growth that's happening where a lot is being restricted from you, right? There's a lot here where Saturn's trying to teach you discipline. It's trying to give you gradual growth with long-term results. And so some of you may feel very frustrated. You may have felt like you're continuing to go through this growth process. This is a nonstop thing that's happening. And so there's a lot here in terms of reflecting and looking to see the internal issues that are behind this blockage. This may help you actually speed up this process. Remember that Saturn is your ruler. So Saturn can give you some great results with this position, along with Saturn controlling your second house of your finances, your possessions, your savings, your earnings in this second house. So you can see yourself grow and prosper significantly by actually going in and seeing what are the underlying issues that need to be resolved. For those of you with an Aquarius moon, Aquarius ascendant, this will be a Pluto retrograde back in your 12th house. And so with this Pluto retrograde back in the 12th, this is deep, right? The 12th house is the deepest house. This is the subconscious. This is your spiritual world, your dream world. And so with this all happening, there can be some some repressed issues, right? The 8th house is what we suppress, but this 12th house is repressed. So this is a lot here that you can go unconsciously. You can find a lot coming up to the surface with this Pluto retrograde. So this can be a time of a lot of difficulty, a lot of emotional struggle, as there's a lot that's being forced up to the surface that has been stuffed down in the subconscious where it can't be seen anymore. So a lot here that needs to be focused and addressed on. And as Saturn's been here, there's a lot that you've been working through anyway with this 12th house energy, where this can make it feel like there's a lot that you have to give away. There is. With this Pluto retrograde, there's a lot that you have to release. For those of you with a Pisces moon, Pisces ascendant, this is a Pluto retrograde back in your 11th house. So this is an interesting placement. Here you can see a shift or change in your gains. So for those with the Pisces moon, Pisces ascendant, this is a time where you may see a reverse in your gains, in your wishes, and your hopes. And you may also completely change your ambitions, your goals. Even though this is Saturn, with Pluto here, there's a lot that's coming up to the surface that's showing you, okay, what are the blockages? What are the fears? What's stopping you in this area with Saturn here in this 11th house? And so Pluto is bringing up the unresolved issues that are revealing where the healing, where the difficulties need to be addressed. Now, lastly, for those of you with an Aries moon, Aries ascendant, this is a Pluto retrograde back in your 10th house. So with this Pluto retrograde back in your 10th house, this is a major time where you can see some unresolved issues surfacing around your career. For a lot of you with Aries Moon Aries Ascendant, you're very impulsive people, right? You're very much inclined towards your goals, your ambitions, taking the initiative, getting things done, especially with all of this activity here in your first house, right? We talked a lot about that when we went through the transit videos previously. If you have not checked it out, there's a whole playlist on these major April 2021 transits that are going to affect you big time with this all happening in your first house. But with this energy here, of Pluto retrograde in your 10th house, this is a major time where you are seeing why Saturn's here, why these blocks are here, why this is taking so long, why this is so difficult, why this feels like a roadblock. And for a lot of you, this is going to show you that this roadblock is helping you, that this is a detour to something better, that this is going to give you long term results, but this is going to bring up the issues behind this where you feel frustrated, where you feel difficulties, where the emotional uncovering is taking place. This can also be a major time where you have to actually address some issues or conflicts that were unresolved previously in your career. So you may see some conflicts pop up here in your actual career field that you need to deal with. This is all a part of this karma centered around these things that need to be addressed, that are blocking or stopping or putting a halt or making it feel like an upward climb in this area. So this has been your horoscope for Pluto retrograde from April 27th through October 6th of 2021. I hope you all enjoyed this. If you like this video, feel free to leave a like as well as a comment. If you are new to this channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button along with the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any new content. Eclipses are coming up, and we have so much to talk about in the month of May and June. You don't want to miss it. If you are interested in learning more on Vedic astrology, there is a course available in the Facebook group, Astrology Lessons with Daquan Jones. You can leave me a message here if you're interested below in the comments, or you can go over to that page and fill in all of the questions and enter into the page. So I will leave all of that information down below in the description and in the comments as well. If there's anything that you'd like me to discuss regarding Vedic astrology, let me know in the comments and I will bring it up in a future video. Any additional comments, anything you'd like to add according to this Pluto retrograde, any insight you may have. Again, this is primarily a tropical type of concept when we talk about this Pluto energy and how it affects us. But a lot of you have asked me to add this in. And so if there's any additional insight, anything that you'd like to add on this Pluto retrograde, I did not go into the tropical aspects because I'm looking at this from a Vedic perspective. But any additional questions, anything else, let me know down below in the comments. And I want to thank you all so much for joining in today, giving this video a watch. Again, don't forget that notification bell and the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on new content, as there's a lot that's coming. And we have so much that we are going to talk about as we're coming towards these eclipses and as there's a Mercury retrograde on the way very soon. So you don't want to miss all that is coming here on this channel. All right, I will see you all in the next video.